I mean, one thing that is interesting is that I think people have the impression that model fitting is something that should be automated, right? I mean, the whole kind of machine learning sort of drive is that really you should just be able to press a button and the parameters come out at the bottom and it's all good. And I'm very much against that. So the first thing to say, I guess, is ideally you should keep your model away from the data for as long as possible. So the moment you actually, the most tempting thing in the world is to, I've got a new idea, I've got some data, I'm going to test it and see if I've made money or not. That is literally the last thing you should do, because the moment you've done that, you're going to be opening yourself up to what I call implicit fitting, which is basically where you've got an account curve, it doesn't look good, you say, oh, I won't do that. Well, you basically made a fitting decision, but you've not made a fitting decision in a controlled way. You've done it in an uncontrolled way, and it's effectively an in-sample fit. So you want to push that decision off as far into the future as possible. So the first thing I do actually is focus more on the behavior of the model rather than on the profitability. So I'll be looking at things like, does this model capture the effect I want it to capture? Are the trading costs reasonable? Does the holding period reflect the sort of effect that I'm trying to capture? So, for example, if I've got a model that's trading every day, but it's looking for 6-month trends, well, that suggests that some kind of smoothing would be in order before continuing. And what I will do is one of two things. I can either, if appropriate, I'll use data that's completely random to make those kinds of decisions. And it may be not completely random, but for example, I might actually create data that has trends in it, like 6-month trends up and down, plus some noise. And it's completely unrealistic, but it can allow me to answer the question, well, does this capture 6-month trends? Because look, here's a 6-month trend. Is it capturing that trend? Yes or no? So that's that's the basic thing, because it's very easy to construct something that doesn't do what you expect it to do. The other thing, if I can't do that, it's not always possible, I will use real data, but I will limit myself to a single market, and I won't be looking at profitability. I will be looking at, I might take a 5-year snapshot of the single market, and I'll just look at the buying and selling behavior, the holding period, and sort of make sure that that's doing what I expect it to do. Now, then what I want to do is to, once I'm happy with the model's behavior, I then want to see whether it's any good or not. But I won't test the thing independently. I'll just drop it into basically a massive portfolio optimization with all the other signals I've got. And what that will do is it will then effectively allocate some risk capital to that model. And obviously, if it's a good model, then the risk capital will be high at the end of the backtesting period. And if it's low, then obviously it's a poor model. And if it's below a certain threshold, there's not really any point implementing it, because if you've got, say, 50 models and average of 2% risk capital, well, if one of them ends up with 0.01% because it's so shockingly poor, then there's no point in implementing it, and you're not going to be achieving anything. You're just going to be writing code for the sake of it. Now, the important thing is that decision as to how much risk capital to put into something is not based on me looking at an account curve. It's based on a fitting process which is controlled, and that means I can do two things. Firstly, I can make sure that it's robust, and it's allowing for the amount of uncertainty in the data, which, and as I've talked about, that's much bigger than you think it is. And secondly, it can be a purely backward-looking thing with no in-sample information polluting it. Now, the reason I can do this is because my models are all structured effectively as linear-weighted combinations. So, I've got lots of Lego building blocks. I combine them in linear weights using a robust portfolio optimization process. And that means that the actual resulting behavior can actually be quite complex, but it's made up of things that individually are quite simple. So none of my individual models are complicated. They're all pretty simple. And actually, if you follow my blog, there's a lot of things where I'm posting something saying, oh, look, this is interesting, but it's going to make my model too complicated, so I'm not going to bother doing it. So it's like I'm constantly I spend a lot of my research time looking at things and deciding that this is not actually, it makes a small but insignificant difference to my performance that's not worth the complexity that it adds. So that's kind of the way I'm thinking. I will only add something if it adds something to my performance, if there's a good thesis behind it. So it's not just a pure data mining exercise that's pulled something out that seems to work and I have no idea why. I believe that can work, but you need to be much better at machine learning than I am. And it also needs to be something that I can implement in a relatively simple way without making my system, for example, horrifically nonlinear.